So we just witnessed this major sell-off sweep across the entire crypto market. And as I'm really digging into what happened, there's one thing that always fascinates me, just how quickly people start panicking the moment we get a decent drop or correction in the markets. Look at XRP, for instance. On the daily chart, we're down about 8.22%, and I think the full drop was somewhere just under 13%. That's what you're seeing on the 7-day view. But here's where it gets interesting. When you actually step back and zoom out, we're still sitting pretty with a 44.71% gain over the past month. And when you look at the 1-year chart for XRP, we're talking about gains of over 400%. This whole situation is giving me serious flashbacks to December when XRP started selling off and dropped down to around the $2 region, almost hitting that $1.90 area. I vividly remember everyone saying at the time, all right, that's it for XRP, it's going back down to $1 or maybe even 50 cents. And then what happened? We kept climbing all the way up to around $3.40. Now we're seeing the exact same pattern play out with XRP having this pullback, and honestly the entire market dropping too. Everyone's suddenly saying things like, oh wait, I thought July was supposed to be bullish, or I thought this whole period was going to be bullish. But here's what's crazy to me. The entire month of July was absolutely insane for crypto across the board. We had this incredible bullish run for pretty much every coin. Now we're seeing a little correction, and suddenly everyone's hitting the panic button. I'm actually going to break down exactly why we shouldn't be freaking out right now. There's this price prediction I came across on X that's really caught my attention. What makes it particularly interesting is that it doesn't just give us a target, it actually comes with a timeline too, which is pretty rare. We're definitely going to dive into that. But let's start by looking at what XRP's price chart currently looks like on the daily time frame so we can get our bearings. Look, I'm cutting this a bit early, so by the time you're watching, hopefully we haven't seen anything too wild happen. But right now, we're just chopping around in what feels like the start of a pullback. I'm keeping my eyes on whether we can build some solid ground around that previous March high, the same level that held us up back in January. We're talking about that $2.96 area. Plus, XRP just filled its gap completely at this spot. Nothing shocking here. We smacked into some serious resistance on the higher timeframes, got rejected, and now we're testing this demand zone. The real question is, are we done falling or do we keep grinding sideways for a while? Honestly, I'd love to see us just chill here, build a proper base, then start climbing again. That's the kind of healthy action that actually means something, not these crazy pumps that fizzle out. But honestly, I think we're heading into some pretty boring action here. I mean, think about it. Some of these altcoins just went absolutely nuts. XRP alone ripped 90% from the lows, and some others literally doubled in a single day. After runs like that, you need to cool off. This pullback we're seeing? Totally normal. We're down about 19% from the top, which honestly just shook out the weak hands and got people a little spooked. But we've been through way worse. Remember that XRP drop we had earlier? That was a brutal 34% haircut. Makes this current dip look like nothing. And you know what? That's actually bullish as hell because it's textbook healthy price action. All this chop does is sweep out the over-leveraged positions and stack up fresh liquidity. That's exactly what you need to fuel the next leg up. The market's basically loading the spring right now. All right, let's dive into what's actually happening with XRP because the numbers are pretty wild. First up, tokenized real-world assets on the XRP ledger just went completely parabolic. We're talking about a 2,260% explosion from $5 million back in January to over $118 million today. That's not a typo. Right now, if you pull up the XRP ledger, you're looking at $133.51 million in RWA value sitting there with 10 different assets. But that's not even the whole story. The stablecoin game is heating up too. $137.36 million in market cap, and that's grown 15.4% just in the last month. When stablecoins are flowing in, that usually means people are getting ready to do business. The real standouts? Open Eden's digital initiative is absolutely crushing it, up 291% recently, and USDC on XRP, that doubled, sitting at 105% gains. The momentum just keeps building. Look at these 7-day numbers. The Open Eden T-bill vault jumped 33%, and USDC climbed 17.2% in just the past week. That's weekly growth, not monthly. What gets me excited is that this feels like we're still in the early innings. There's a whole pipeline of announcements and partnerships that haven't even launched on the XRP ledger yet. So if we're seeing this kind of traction now, imagine what happens when those actually go live. And speaking of going live, Brazil just dropped some serious news. Vert, which is basically Brazil's biggest fund management company, just launched their entire blockchain platform on the XRP ledger for managing private credit. We're not talking about some pilot program either. Their first transaction was a $130 million CRA issuance. Brazil's been absolutely crushing it for XRP. This isn't some random partnership out of nowhere. They were literally one of the first countries to get a live spot XRP ETF trading, which tells you everything about how serious they are. And the Ripple connection runs deep there. Remember Travelex Bank hooking up with Ripple back in 2022? That wasn't just some small regional bank either. They had the Central Bank of Brazil backing that play. The central bank has been in talks with Ripple for years now, which is huge when you think about it. Brazil's basically been Ripple's testing ground for serious financial infrastructure, and now we're seeing it pay off in a massive way. This new Vert platform isn't just dabbling around either. They're going live with 700 million Brazilian reals in structured credit. That's roughly 130 million US dollars getting processed through XRP infrastructure. So here's something pretty exciting. We're looking at a massive $130 million issuance happening on the XRP ledger, along with their EVM sidechain. The first asset they're rolling out is actually really cool. It's a CRA that's specifically designed to finance Brazil's agribusiness sector. And get this, that sector alone makes up over 20% of Brazil's entire national GDP. This is honestly a huge leap forward for tokenization, bringing real on-chain transparency, efficiency, and the ability to trace everything step by step. I've got the full announcement right here if you want to dive deeper into the details. Now, we already covered the value proposition earlier, so I won't rehash all of that. But what's really neat is how they're tapping into what makes the XRP ledger so powerful. You know, that efficiency, those low costs, and all the built-in compliance features. Their Vert solution is basically creating this secure pathway for moving value around. Plus, you get crystal clear settlement tracking throughout every single stage of the structured credit process. And here's where it gets even more interesting. They're also integrating the XRP ledger's EVM sidechain, which runs on an Ethereum-compatible environment. What this means is they're bringing full smart contract functionality into the mix. So now you can have programmable automation, store all your metadata and important documents right on-chain, and get way more detailed reporting than ever before. It's pretty amazing when you think about it. I've got some great quotes here that really capture what this means. The director of digital assets at Vert put it perfectly. They said, "We are enabling operation events to be recorded in the most granular way possible, ensuring traceability and transparency with event records increasingly closer to the moment they occur, approaching real time." That's huge. They're basically saying you can track everything as it happens, almost in real time. And then they added something that really hits home. It is a concrete step towards the evolution of tokenization as a structural pillar of the modern capital market. What's also really smart is how they're addressing what foreign investors have been asking for: more transparency in operations. Tokenization is essentially solving that puzzle piece by piece. The whole thing is just fantastic to see unfold. And of course, this partnership between Vert and the XRP ledger, working hand in hand with Ripple, is yet another major milestone in their mission to keep pushing innovation forward in Brazil's capital markets. The founders, total pioneers in Brazil's CRA market. In just 9 years, Vert has grown into something incredible. We're talking 200 plus professionals, over 350 operations, and get this, 86 billion issued with 58 billion under management. That's absolutely massive. Here's why this matters. Agribusiness is huge for Brazil's economy, and improving how credit works in this space, that's game-changing stuff. What we're seeing here is blockchain technology, specifically the XRP ledger, proving it can be the backbone for modernizing financial markets that literally drive national growth. And Vert isn't stopping here. They're looking at expanding to handle over $500 million in additional structured credit operations. The beautiful thing is how adaptable this system is. It's built to handle new asset classes and roll with Brazil's changing regulatory landscape. This is seriously exciting stuff. That $500 million pipeline would put XRP right near the top of these networks. We absolutely love seeing this kind of momentum. It's huge for XRP and sets us up perfectly for the next topic: price predictions. No worries at all about the wait. We totally get it. So here's something pretty wild. Chartered market technician Tony Severino is calling for XRP to hit $13 in the next 42 days. I know, right? Pretty crazy stuff. What's interesting is he's basing this on patterns from back in 2017 and 2018. But here's what I really like about his approach. He's actually using Elliott wave theory. Most people completely skip over this when they're analyzing XRP price action, which is honestly a missed opportunity. The only other person I know who really dives into Elliott wave with XRP is Credible Crypto. You know how it goes. Usually when people say, we're going to repeat 2017 to 2018, they just slap some bar charts together and call it a day. But Tony's different here. He's giving us an actual price target with a real time frame, those 42 days. That's the kind of analysis that actually means something, instead of just vague moon-soon predictions. So we're looking at roughly that time frame. He doesn't pin down an exact date, but this chart is genuinely fascinating and could line up beautifully. Look, I've been saying the $10 to $15 range is totally possible. So the price target itself, not out of left field at all. The real challenge is always the timing, right? Predicting when something will happen is incredibly tough, but having Tony the Bull Severino, a legit chartered market technician, actually put a timeline on this double-digit milestone, that's pretty significant. His analysis is dropping right as XRP is riding this broader market bounce, fighting to get back above $3 for the first time in 4 months. Once it broke through that stubborn resistance, boom, new yearly high, and we're getting into price discovery territory. But here's the thing that gets me excited. Severino thinks we're still just getting started with this uptrend. What he's calling the final move for XRP suggests there's way more upside from where we are now. And he's not just pulling numbers out of thin air. He's using historical patterns to map out when this could all go down. According to his analysis, XRP might hit its cycle peak in the next 40 days, which matches up perfectly with how long it took to reach that 2018 bull run top. The really cool part, his chart shows this massive symmetrical triangle that's been building on the weekly time frame for over 7 years. So this triangle actually started forming right after XRP crashed from that 3.8 peak back in January 2018. Even through all those rough years when XRP was seriously underperforming, this triangle just kept its shape. Pretty remarkable when you think about it. Here's where it gets really interesting. When XRP blasted past those $1 and $2 psychological levels in November 2024, it finally broke out of that massive triangle, but then it hit a wall at $3.47 in January 2025, creating what looks like a smaller symmetrical triangle or bull pennant. That little pattern hung around for over 6 months, and XRP just recently broke above it during this latest push to $3.60. Tony Severino thinks this fresh breakout could rocket us to a new all-time high of $13. We're talking 261% up from here, or an absolutely insane 1900% rise from where that 7-year triangle breakout started. Honestly, with everything that's been happening around XRP lately, hitting these targets wouldn't shock me at all. I actually saw this perfect post pop up on my timeline. We're apparently at phase 8 of XRP's rise to dominance. And look what we've already checked off. RLUSD launched. Trump's inauguration happened. Gary officially left the SEC. We've got XRP strategic reserve talk. The Ripple case wrapped up. Alt season is here. And Ripple's announcing major bank partnerships left and right. The next massive catalyst, XRP ETF approval, is still pending. And man, we've got so many XRP ETFs just sitting in that waiting room right now. They're all lined up, just waiting for the final green light to get pushed through. What's really exciting is how this momentum around XRP just keeps building and building. I mean, look at right now. Trading volume is absolutely crushing it, up over 150% at $17.8 billion. That's huge because it tells us that even with some sell-off happening, there's still massive buying pressure underneath. Remember, trading volume captures both sides, buying and selling, so XRP is definitely holding strong here. Honestly, I'm not worried about the price chart at all. And all of this is happening while we keep seeing more and more adoption on the XRP ledger, which could totally support that wild $13 target within 42 days. Now look, I think we should manage our expectations on that exact time frame, but if it actually happens, that would be absolutely insane. Anyway, that's a wrap for today. Hope you guys loved this breakdown. If you did, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and turn those notifications on because we've got tons more free content coming your way. Thanks for watching, Pio. Peace out, everyone.